Hello and welcome to the inaugural session of the Prefect podcast. Today we're going to be interviewing Mrs. Peck, a PRS teacher and the head of the PRS department. Today we're going to be talking about some things about Mrs. Peck as a person and also some things that you might want to know about PRS if you're choosing it as your IGCSE or your A-level course. So Mrs. Peck, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh.
Are you looking forward to be one of the first member of staff that we're interviewing on the Prefect podcast series?
I'm strangely nervous, but we'll see how it goes.
Yes, no worries, miss. So let's get right into it and ask you, what are 3 things that people might be interested about you as a teacher?
As a teacher, I guess you might be interested to know that I love a gimmick. So some of my younger pupils will be very familiar with Steve the Pen, or getting to wear the Philosopher King or Queen crown for their lessons. Also, before I came to Harrow School, I used to work for a free school, which was a type of school in the UK that could basically do what they wanted. So I kind of brought philosophy to that school, which I thought was really fun.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, Mrs. Peck always talks about the Philosopher King and the Philosopher Queen, talking about the crown, but unfortunately never gives it out to our Year 13 class, so that's a bit unfortunate to it. Now, what are some things that people might be interested as you as a person, some interesting facts about you?
Okay, interesting facts about me as a person. Did you know that I'm actually a qualified climbing and canoeing instructor?
Did young Mrs. Peck like going out into like the lakes and stuff?
I used to be like an instructor for a little while at one of those, you know, like the Outward Bound centres. Yeah, I did that for a little while when I was working out whether I wanted to work with children. I know, who knew?
I can never imagine you as quite an outdoorsy type of person.
I am an outdoorsy type of person. I was also the first ever female Girl Scout in my county, in Norfolk. So again, quite outdoorsy when I was younger. I used to be a keen singer when I was younger as well.
Really?
So I used to lead an a cappella singing group. And we won lots of talent shows and prizes around where we lived.
That's greatly impressive. I never knew that you were interested in kayaking or canoeing. Have you ever tried canoeing in Hong Kong before?
Not yet. No, it's something I need to try. I'm desperate to go out actually, because I live near the sea. We often see people kayaking out to sea, and I'm quite jealous.
Yes, definitely. I've tried kayaking in one of the sea kayaking trips back in Year 8, and that was a greatly interesting situation. Before I went to that trip, it was something which everyone said was the most horrible thing ever, because supposedly 80% of people got hypothermia from the kayaking trip. But it turns out I went on it and it was really great. I'm not sure if they still have this trip in the school, but if you're interested in it, make sure you go check it out. They don't have a really high subscription rate, so there should always be a space for you. So now that we've talked a bit about who you are, about you as a person, as you as a teacher, what do you think about PRS? How did you get into PRS in the first place?
So interestingly, at my school, they didn't actually offer religious studies or philosophy as an A-level, which was really sad. So I didn't get to kind of get into it at A-level, but what did get me into it was my English teacher who showed us Waiting for Godot, and kind of introduced us to existential philosophy. And that was the thing that kind of ignited my curiosity about the subject. So classic teacher getting you into it.
Well, I think Waiting for Godot is a very interesting kind of play, because I was watching one of the Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen kind of variation of Waiting for Godot.
I saw it.
And one of the things that I heard Ian McKellen saying was that it didn't have any religious connotations, which I felt was quite strange to it. And what are your thoughts about Waiting for Godot, or kind of the connotations to it? Do you agree with Ian McKellen?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with him on that. I think you get out of it what you put into it. So I feel like some people can bring a religious kind of dimension to it, but if you're coming at it from an atheist angle, there's plenty for you to kind of engage with there. So yeah, I feel like the play's kind of designed to kind of allow the watcher of the play to get out of it what they want to. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and well, as someone who probably is very interested, and I know you teach both philosophy and religious studies. You taught us philosophy last year, but now you're teaching the Year 12s ethics this year. So I'm wondering, which one do you enjoy more about kind of both of them?
I mean, philosophy is my first love. It's what I did my degree in, and it was my specialism. So I do have a real soft spot for kind of epistemology, like theories of knowledge. I like the kind of more modern philosophy, moving into contemporary times and kind of looking at the kind of analytic school of philosophy. But I'm really unapologetic about loving the religious studies side of the subject, because I think it's absolutely fascinating and incredibly important for people to learn about other people's beliefs and ideas and practices.
You talked about doing philosophy at a university. Which university did you do your philosophy at?
I went to UEA, which was a really well-respected university at the time, so I kind of chose it because it had a thriving philosophy department. Yeah, I didn't make a mistake. They had a kind of multidisciplinary degree, so I got to do bits of economics, sociology, history, as part of my degree, which really attracted me to the course. Yeah.
With that in mind, how would you describe philosophy to maybe a younger kid going to maybe the prep school, thinking about what is PRS? It's a new topic, I've never heard of it before. How would you describe philosophy to them?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way to explain it to a young child is to talk to them about questions. So it's all about inquiring about questions that no other subject can answer. So it's quite difficult to talk to a 5-year-old about it, but the easiest way to do it is to kind of ask them things like, how do you know that the world around you is real? And then they'll usually be able to engage with it that way.
I think that that's definitely something which is very interesting, because when I interact with philosophy, it's always about questioning. It's always about constantly questioning, even though you might not have the answer yourself. And it's one of the things which you might be able to check out in the Lyceum philosophy if you're still signing up for your SEAs. You might want to choose it, which is kind of like a mini IGCSE or a mini EPQ kind of a situation for those who have been doing IGCSEs or might have missed out on being able to do a PRS IGCSE. Now, I really love this questioning, because sometimes when we're in a discussion, someone just says an idea, and I just constantly question them and question them again, and it really helps develop one's thoughts and really help them have a better understanding of both themselves and what they're thinking about in general. Now let's move on from talking about philosophy to maybe a younger kid. How would you describe it to maybe an IGCSE student, or maybe someone choosing their IGCSEs?
Yeah, for somebody picking their IGCSEs, it starts to get a bit more complex. So PRS is a multidisciplinary subject. So actually, within our lessons, we're looking through 3 different lenses. So of course, we've got the philosophy angle, and that's actually probably more about picking apart arguments and deciding on the soundness or validity of them. And then, of course, you've got the kind of theology side of it, where we're all kind of critically analysing different theological approaches to things. And then we've also got a social anthropological angle, where we're actually really interested in looking at how beliefs and values affect people's behaviour, you know, how do they affect moral decision making, for example. So there's we've got multi-dimensional ways of looking at it. And it also, you know, for a GCSE pupil, they get to kind of engage with the world on a higher level. So they can be watching the news, you know, and see things about things like war, ethical issues surrounding climate change, for example, and be able to engage with that on a higher level, because they can think about things like just war theory or stewardship, to engage with that.
And how much do you think this kind of PRS curriculum in Harrow is focused towards kind of purely the abstract philosophy, or how does it interact with its applications in life as well?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work actually to make sure that our curriculum does look at those abstract ideas, but actually shows you how they can be applied in the real world, and when they should be applied and when they shouldn't. Because it's okay to, you know, look at philosophical ideas, but actually walk out of this room and not be too worried about whether you exist or not. That's okay.
Definitely, I think that there's always this ever-present question in philosophy about, well, I believe in something, but does it really exist? Or like, I believe in this philosophically, but in real life, how am I meant to apply it to my physical world? And there's always this kind of balance between the two. But now, thinking about it, moving from IGCSE as a PRS student and moving to A-levels as a PRS student, what do you necessarily think is kind of the differences or the similarities between the two?
If you're moving up to A-level, I would say the big jump is in your evaluation of ideas. So you're probably finding that on the course. Is that kind of 50% of the course is actually based around developing your own points of view on ideas and making sure that they're well reasoned. So for us, actually it's kind of a common misconception that there are no right and wrong answers in philosophy. That isn't necessarily the case. There are really good and really bad arguments. And so we're really keen on kind of picking apart those ideas and deciding on, you know, whether ideas are any good. How much should they influence us? What are the implications of holding these ideas? What effect does it have on us and our world? And so you kind of get to pick that apart a little bit further at A-level.
I definitely think that is the case because I've done both IGCSE and A-level PRS, and I think that one of the similarities is that your essay structures are all the same. Your approach to the fundamental questions, the 10 markers, the 15 markers, are essentially the same. So if you're kind of thinking about, is this a massive step up? I wouldn't say it's a massive step up in the sense that if you're doing it very well in GCSEs, you should be able to do it very well in A-levels. But at the same time, of course, the questioning, the depth of what you're questioning really does change between the two subjects. So that's something you could think about if you're thinking about, well, should I choose A-levels PRS for next year? That's something you might want to bear in mind. Now, moving on from this kind of introducing PRS to a certain group of people, how do you think the PRS department supports people who do indeed choose PRS as a subject?
Well, we like to think we've got lots of kind of extracurricular SCAs, CCAs on offer for our people. So you've already mentioned actually the Lyceum Philosophy Club, which is doing a fantastic job of giving people an opportunity to do that school certificate and kind of explore an area of philosophy that they've chosen themselves. But also we've got things like our debate kind of work that we're doing, helping people to develop arguments in that way. And then just like the wider ideas that we're encouraging people to explore. So for example, you've set up the Philosophy Society, which we're really supportive of. And it's just kind of nurturing that love of philosophy. So of course we've got people like Warren, who's written his amazing essay and achieved loads with his essay prizes with Cambridge, which again, we're really supportive of and nurture.
I definitely think that that's so true. I mean, I'm a PRS student and I get a lot of support from Mrs. Peck, Mr. Byrne and Mr. Bellamy. If you have any questions, any thoughts, you can always reach out to them and they're always very open for discussion. So I definitely completely agree with Mrs. Peck. There is a really, really strong support in the PRS department. So if you have any questions about whether you're doing your A-levels and you have some questions about the A-level course, or even things beyond the course, there's always someone you can reach out to me. You can reach out to me. I always do my Philosophy Society on Tuesdays, or you can reach out to Mrs. Peck, send them an email, Mr. Bernard, they're always very, very happy to help you. Now, how do you think PRS can be applied beyond the classroom? We've talked a bit about this previously, but maybe we could elaborate that a bit more.
I actually think PRS has never been more important in the world that we're in today in terms of helping pupils to be global citizens and to move on from Harrow to the world beyond and be able to enter a world of work where, as is constantly said, you're potentially going to be doing jobs that don't even exist yet. The thing is that we know that obviously there are lots of people out there developing amazing technologies, but what we also know is that there are certain things at the moment that a machine can't do. A machine can't think. A machine can't critically analyse the ethics of a new technology. And so actually, for us, we've never been more important. Having people to say, okay, we've invented this is fantastic, but should we have this? Has never been more important. And so I think that there is such a lot of room for philosophers and ethicists in the world to come. There are companies now who are employing company ethicists. Like, this is happening. Even if you want to be a medic, it's really important that you're looking from the angle of the ethics of your job. And so we feel really strongly that these questions have to continue being asked. It's really important to know that, philosophy was the first subject. We were there and maths sprang out of it, and we were there and science sprang out of it. And so it's really important to remember that we're asking questions which maybe in a few hundred years' time, a scientist might say, it's okay, philosophers, we've got this now. And so, we need to be thinking about this stuff still. Think about Aristotle. He's the first person who suggested that perhaps the universe was made of tiny particles. Everybody else at the time was probably like, why is he going on about this? This is all irrelevant to my life. And now, obviously, we've got quantum physicists who are like, we'll take this from here.
Yeah, I definitely
it's important.
Yeah, it's definitely something very interesting, and I definitely agree. There's this quote that I've read recently, which was quite funny, and of course it's in a bit of a different context, and it says something along the lines of, okay, the scientists are climbing up this Everest, or this high mountain, and when they reach the peak of the mountain, they already noticed that the religious people were sitting there all along. And maybe that's a different context, the religious people. But I think the philosophers can also be seen as that light. You reach up and you already see the philosophers already thinking about the same questions forever. I think that definitely is very interesting. So, Mrs. Peck, we've talked a bit about the applications of philosophy to our real life. Now, when people are choosing their A-levels, they're just thinking about what subjects they're doing. They always think about universities and then their jobs. So what do you think is the relationship between choosing PRS and its opportunities that you see in university?
I would say PRS can sit really nicely along different sets of A-levels for starters. So yes, you might be doing exclusively science subjects. PRS sits really well alongside those a lot of the time for the reasons that we just spoke about. But also, if you're kind of going down the arts and humanities route, of course, it sits really well alongside other ethics essay subjects, essentially. And then by the time you get to go on to university, it's a well-respected academic subject. It gives you really good skills in terms of essay writing, in terms of critical thinking and analysis. These are all things that will stand you in really good stead in any essay writing subject. But actually, if you're going into the sciences and you're going to be kind of analysing scientific theories in more detail, the critical thinking skills that you're learning with PRS are also useful there as well. So then when it gets towards, starting to think about the world of work, PRS can link into multiple kind of areas of work, just because of the nature of it as a multidisciplinary subject. So, and also I like to think that people who study PRS are also just taught to be a good human in the world.
I think that's definitely very true, and
Yeah.
and I think that I could echo that so well in my current university searches, because I'm currently applying to universities myself, and you look at philosophy in the courses and you realise that it's mixed with almost a million different things. There's philosophy and art, philosophy and mathematics, and there's also, of course, if you read a lot of scientific books like Thomas Kuhn's Revolutions or Karl Popper, a lot of his discussions, although scientific, are actually philosophical at its core, and that is something very, very important. And maybe for a final question, and this is something that I want to ask you a lot, is, well, do you think religious studies is something which is philosophical, is it something which is psychological, or is it something sociological?
I think it could be a combination of all three. Honestly, I think religious studies, like the study of theology, religious studies as a subject, as I've said, it is a multidisciplinary subject, but it's, you've got to imagine that essentially there are two sides to it. Yes, you're learning about what people believe. We're learning about, arguments, but also we're reflecting on what it means to us. And so we're really thinking carefully about, what does this mean for my worldview and the way that I look at the world? What are the implications of this for how can I apply this to issues? So it's very much like looking through a window, but also looking in a mirror.
I definitely agree with you on that. And perhaps one final question. I realized I said that previous question was a final one, but I've often heard, or at least by a specific teacher, I will not name the names just not to pick on anyone, but indeed, he's always said that, philosophy and religious studies, it's just religious studies that has no philosophy in it. What would be your immediate rebuttal towards this teacher?
I don't know who this teacher is, but they need to come and find me and I will tell them why they are really wrong. It is absolutely... Philosophy and religious study, if you actually think about philosophy and theology are quite different disciplines. They are fundamentally different. Philosophy is about arguments and validity. Theology is about critical analysis of religious ideas, essentially. They are really different, but philosophers and theologians have also been tackling the same questions for millennia. They've been talking about the same things, and that's why we have that crossover. They're trying to tackle the same issues. Who are we? Where are we from? Are we our mind or our body? These are questions that philosophers and theologians are hugely interested in. So he needs to come and find me, or she, whoever they are. Yes. Whoever they are, they're mistaken, and I'll be really happy to show them otherwise.
I really appreciate your support to what my initial thoughts were towards that teacher. So I hope you've enjoyed this inaugural or this first kind of episode of the Prefect Podcast. If you want me to interview any other prefects, any other teachers, or any subjects that you're interested in, let me know in the comments below and I'll happily reach out to you there. Like always, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me, really helps the channel grow. Stay safe, my friends. See you soon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.